How to Survive Hell, Part 1. I woke up in a birthing sack, panicked and choking on amniotic fluid. I clawed at the fleshy walls, fighting with all my terrified strength to free myself. With a wet, ripping sound, I was dumped into a muddy cobbles of the streets below, twisting my ankle as I landed. Cold rain blasted my naked body clean of the sack's liquid. I tried, but failed to get to my feet. The street was alien to me. An insane melody of architecture ranging from modern to prehistoric. The sky above boiled with storm clouds, illuminating my surroundings with non-stop flashings of light. A man walked over to me, his hair matted with filth and rain streaked down his mismatched leather clothing. He said something. He said nothing, just watched me squirm on the floor. "Please, help me," I gasped. He answered by slamming a foot down on my face, breaking my jaw and making my vision real. He moved into my limbs, stomping, tugging until he heard the bones snap. Crippled, naked, and screaming, there was nothing I could do to defend myself. And when he started to eat me alive, my introduction to hell wasn't unusual. Very few people actually survive their first hour, let alone their first night. When they die, they go through the same thing again, emerging from a new birthing sack, another part of the city. Eventually, they learn to attack the first person to see, and if they're lucky, they'll be able to kill that person. That's the one rule of hell. The strong take from the weak. Get used to the idea you might just make it through to the afterlife. I'm gonna give you a helping hand. Consider this your handbook to hell. A primer of the inferno. Make no mistake though, I'm not doing this out of some kind of goodness of my heart. When you die, you'll owe me one. Don't worry about trying to find me. I guarantee we'll want to kill each other eventually. Eternity is a long fucking time. So it's a matter of when rather than if. Do as I tell you, you'll find a better chance than most of avoiding my own nasty introduction to the pit. Welcome to hell. Some people swear that they saw a light at the end of the tunnel when they died. To my mind, those people either hallucinated or they're fucking lying. Most of us just wake up in a birthing sack a few minutes after death. The buildings of hell are covered in these horrible yellow-brown pimples growing out of the brick. I've already mentioned the first thing you need to do is claw your way out of the sack and get ready to fight. That is where the real bitch of a situation comes to play. Since not everybody has the strength to break through their flesh's sack, you get the body you had just before you died, you see. So, let's just say if you were born a cripple, or maybe you died too young or too old, well, tough shit. You're gonna go through a rough day, eternity drowning in birthing fluid over and over and over. If you manage to break free from your sack, don't waste your time mopping around wondering what the fuck happened. Get on your feet and get ready to defend yourself. Chances are good that the first person you see, he's gonna be hungry. There are no plants or animals in hell, so cannibalism is your only option. Well, that's if you don't fancy starving to death over again. Aim to kill the first person you see. It might take a few tries. Most of the residents of hell have been fighting for survival a lot longer than you. They might even have armor they made from tanned skin, scavenged from metal and bone. They'll almost certainly have a shiv, club, or even an axe. All of that will be useful to you if you can take it from them, that is. Next thing to do is find shelter. It never fucking stops raining in hell, and pneumonia is a pretty shitty way to die. Luckily, you'll have a fine selection of buildings to choose from. Ever wanted to live in a rundown Victorian manor with half a roof and no furniture? Or how about an Egyptian mud-bricked hovel? If people have built it, you'll find a crumbling version of it in hell. Pick a building, kill any squads you find in it, and move on. The best houses are the ones that come with a supply of scrap metal and timber. Not only are they good for making weapons with, they're also vital for getting drinkable water. I learned the hard way that hell's rain is teeming with disease. It has to be boiled before it's safe, so get a fire going. And try to make sure you do it very necessarily. So we've killed our first man, found the first home. Things are going well for you. You got that far and you're gonna want to hang on to what you have forever. But you won't. Something will kill you and eventually you'll have to start all over again. My record is a year. If you can beat that, then you'll understand hell and its denizens. The damned. The people of hell can be grouped into two categories. First, the fresh meat. Those who have just climbed out of their birthing sack. It's kill or be killed when it comes to fresh meat. It always has been. Newly birthed want clothes and tools, and they will kill to get a hold of them. The second category is the residents. Fresh meat has a quick and easy supply of food, leather, and bones. At least that's how they view them. Residents have a much easier time of it, for sure, and all of them will fight to retain their resident status for as long as they can. Make no mistake though, residents victimize each other just as much as they prey on the fresh meat. If you're a woman, for instance, well, you better get over any hang-ups about sexual violence. Women in hell get it a lot worse than men, just put to you that way. It's a sad fact. If you're not one of those bodybuilders or warrior women, do the smart thing and prostitute yourself out for protection. Self-respect doesn't keep you breathing after all. Remember, how you get the body you had just before you died. Well, that fact forms the core of hell society. Truth of the matter is, that's how it is throughout history. It's usually been men who die in battle, which means that in hell, you're a lot of men with young, strong, fit bodies for war. Don't like it? Well, tough shit. Those are the guys who call the shots. If you can fight them, you better do as they tell you. If you live long enough to fight, well, you might get invited to one of those resident tribes. These groups are people who band together for the sake of safety and numbers. Believe me, being a part of a group makes a lot of things easier in hell. However, keep in mind, you are only a part of the tribe as long as you're a resident. Get yourself killed, it's back to being fresh meat. Tribes are the closest thing to civilized society you'll find in hell. If you're part of a tribe, well, you have people on your side who probably won't kill you unless, shit gets rough. Doesn't sound like much, but it's as good as it gets. You are in hell after all. My own survival record was thanks to me getting to a tribe after all. Life was good there for a while. We had about 50 soldiers and plenty of girls. Nobody could touch us, and the men abided by an honor code. So the usual fear of being stabbed in the back by your friends wasn't too high of an issue. I could have spent an eternity in some reasonable comfort. But hell has ways of fucking you over a good thing. Human flesh and boiled rainwater doesn't exactly make for a balanced diet. Sooner or later, even the strongest resident will die of malnutrition. I did. Well, it lasted a year on it, though the last few months were fucking agony. If I believe in God, I'd swear He designed hell to be in such a way that nobody stays on top of the food chain for long. The city in the waste. Most of the damned live in hell. Most of the damned live in this city of hell. That's where all fresh meat is born, and considering the size of the place, coupled with the short life expectancy, a lot of you will spend eternity without ever even setting a foot outside of this. Take my advice. Do not leave the city. Things are rough on the streets, that's true. But trust me when I say it gets a whole lot worse if you try to leave. This is surrounded by a wasteland called Gehenna. At first glance, it doesn't seem like much, just an empty expanse of gray stretching out into infinity. Sometimes the damned lose that fire in the belly and the will to survive and set off wandering to Gehenna. Most of them never came back. I made the walk myself once, a long time ago. I didn't care how hard you think you are. Spend enough time there, it'll break you down. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I'm a good person who never deserved this. Nobody can say that and not be a fucking liar. I'm not evil though, or rather I wasn't until at least until I got to hell. You murder, rape, and torture because, they do the same to you. You're murdered, raped, and tortured because they know you'll do the same to them. Give it long enough, you'll just don't want to face it anymore. That's when you take the walk in Gehenna. First couple of miles were nothing special. The rain dropped after a while. The sludge beneath my feet began to give way to a gray ash, and I caught my first few glimpses of hell's sky beyond the clouds. It's a flat gray with a white sun, completely devoid of beauty or warmth. I trudged on. While walking through Gehenna, I lost my urge to eat, drink, or sleep. My body naturally started to waste away, but I didn't care. Even my skin started to peel away from my bones, and they were exposed. I didn't care. The further I walked, the hollower I became in mind, body, and soul. I don't know what could have happened if I had kept going. Frankly, I don't want to know. Some parts of me still wanted to live, so I turned back. I'd walked for a few days, maybe weeks. When I turned around, this was only a few steps away. I stepped back into the city, and my body finally fell apart. When I emerged from the birthing sack again, I swore I'd never step into Gehenna again. Escaping hell. There are ways to leave hell. That should be obvious. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you now, would I? Sometimes the living get into their head that they want to talk with the dead. They get their crystals, incense, and spirit boards in hopes of reaching to their loved ones. Nothing more to do than trick themselves into thinking they've made contact, smile, or cry, convinced that their loved granny is playing the harp on a cloud somewhere before getting on with their lives. If you have skills to actually reach us, though, they can open a gate between hell and the world of the living that we perceive as a pillar of fire stretching down from the clouds. As soon as one of those pillars shows up, the damned scramble to get to it first. You haven't seen the true nature of man until you watch thousands of damned swarming over each other, kicking, biting, clawing to be the one who finally escapes. Contacting the dead has always resulted in a bloodbath. Even the most civilized tribes fall apart the instant it becomes clear that only one can leave. I've left twice now, my body behind in a ridden pillar of fire into the clouds. Some people believe that you can be possessed by demons. Let me tell you something, demons aren't real. What we see as demonic possessions is just one of the damns testing out their new body. Let's face it, if you fought your way through hell to get back to the living world, you're not going to be your best behavior for long. Sooner or later, we take things too far, our host dies, or our family cave and recruit a goddamn exorcist. Then we're fresh out of the birthing sack and on the streets again. I'm gonna go now. When you get to hell, remember my advice, and that you owe me one. Maybe we can form a tribe someday. But for the time being, I want to see my new body can do. Part 2. By now you should have a pretty good idea of what to expect from hell. You know to kill first person you see, and when you fight your way out of the birthing sack, you know to find clothing, tools, and shelter. Now, no matter what you do, how well you do, someday it's going back to being fresh meat again. This is the biggest city you can imagine. Tribes fight and die for territory, and taking a wrong turn is a fucking death sentence. You'll get a feel of where you should and shouldn't go eventually. Develop a kind of street smarts. You need to stay a resident for more than a day after all. Even so, there are places in this where you should know about. Let's do a little sightseeing tour of hell. Maybe an advance warning will do you some good after all. Skin Street. Allow me to tell you about the first time I saw Skin Street. I dropped out of my birthing sack onto the road, stood back, and got myself ready to fight. Nobody was there. Not a single person was out in the street that stretched for miles in either direction. I relaxed a little and took a look around. Most of the streets in this are a labyrinthian network of buildings. You could spend most of your stay in hell in a paranoid state. Just around the next corner, there's someone ready just to beat you. But Skin Street isn't like that. It's a straight, blind street with only rain and darkness to hamper visibility. The weird thing is I felt more vulnerable there than any other part of this. You've never walked into a wide, empty space that you felt so exposed. Yeah, imagine being naked, unarmed, and in hell. Still, I knew what I was supposed to do. The first step was to find some clothing after all. That's where I learned about how Skin Street got its name. Every building, every busted light gas lamp was decorated in flayed skin. And I'd been in hell long enough to see the point not to be too freaked out, but I'd be lying if I say that it didn't affect me in a fucked up kind of way. It reminded me of Christmas, hanging people's wreaths and lights in our houses like some sort of thing. I remember the time I'd spent with my family, with my kids on Christmas morning. Feelings like that, they'll get you killed. I pushed them back down and pulled scraps from the nearest buildings. Some scraps from the nearest buildings were if someone going to leave clothing material lying about, well, I might as well take it, right? It's free after all. I didn't know at the time, but every step I took on Skin Street, I was being watched. When the attack came, I didn't get a glimpse of the guy, and it was like bang. My skull fractured from an expert swing of a club. Whoever hit me, it went for the back of my eyes. And for the second hit, I hit the floor. Stuck his fingers into my sockets, and I was blind, crying like a baby. And when he started to peel away my skin, here's the thing. Some people are fucked up, even in hell standards. The loner, serial killer, stalker, psychos all make their way to Skin Street in the end. Most of the damned use the whole body to kill, but Skin Street is the people who like to just take trophies. They leave their ornaments out as bait for the ignorant, skulking the shadows and waiting for the best time to ambush. If you find yourself in Skin Street, you're gonna have to think fast. Forget clothing, just grab a rock, piece of wood, or something else you can use as a weapon, and stay out of the fucking shadows. Keep checking behind you and get out of there as quickly as you can. There's Predurtian Farms. You're gonna be chased in hell. That's unavoidable. At some point you'll stumble into somebody bigger than you, or you'll find someone and get yourself outnumbered. Forget about a fair fight. Somebody can take you down without fighting back. But you bet that's what they're gonna do. It's easy to lose focus on running for your life, but you can forget to pay attention to your surroundings. That, my friend, is a big mistake. The outskirts of Predurtian Farms are little with billboards, and they promise free food and safety to anybody fucking stupid enough to believe them. The tribes that fight over that particular area like to herd people off the streets and into industrial complex that they call home. Good news is that those tribes won't kill you. Bad news is they're big fans of taking people alive. They've got a project, you see, been working on it for as long as I can remember. I couldn't tell you I couldn't tell you who originally decided that in hell should have an organized food production. That only idea, it's stuck over the years. Countless tribes have taken it upon themselves to try and make that dream a reality. Get yourself captured, and you look forward to a bit of slave labor, for the most part. Perdition farms try to make use of breeding pods as a source of food. They force their slaves to harvest them from malls, grinding them into industrial vats, mixing them with blood, body parts, rainwater, anything else they could conceivably make a fucking broth. The life of a slave is short, brutal, and fucking disgusting. Particularly when those slaves are used as guinea pigs for latest concoction. You see, amniotic fluid can be drunk if you're desperate, or drinking too much of it will result in you making an empty stomach from every available orifice. The flesh shacks are a different matter, though. I couldn't tell you exactly what they are, but people say they're actual flesh, while others swear they're like a fungus. What do I know is that they repair themselves over time. Eat some of their flesh, and over the past few days, it'll grow with a new sack inside you. It's a small mercy that you won't live long enough to see it break through your skin. You'll be dead shortly after your stomach bursts. If you're lucky, your days as a slave will end when a tribe decides they want some real meat. Well, they're not stupid enough to test our broth on themselves. Not when there's no shortage of slaves in hell, after all. Look, I can't force you to stay out of perdition farms. I can only offer you advice. In my opinion, if you think you're being hurted there, it's better to take what's ever in hand and cut your own throat. I take fresh meat status 100 times before spending a day on those farms. The boneyard. So you think and say, hey, now I kind of nut job who'd join a cult if there's any in hell. If it sounds like you, the boneyard has got you covered. You see, there's a certain kind of religious fanatics who are really, they belong in hell. I'm not talking about those old dears who bake cakes and raise money for church roofs here. I'm talking about the guys who went to war because God commanded it, who burned women for supposedly contorting with demons, and who saw nothing wrong with a fucking odd kid. When those get to hell, they're too quick to make sense of what happened, why they face reality when you can pretend it's all just a test of faith. They find mind-liked folks in the boneyard. I'm told that the boneyard was a cathedral surrounded by a cemetery that stretched horizon to horizon. That's maybe true, but I don't know. These days, that's a shanty town of temples, churches built from materials scavenged from the streets. Everywhere you look, you'll find wild-eyed zealots preaching their own twisted versions of redemption and gangs of masked men who prowl for fresh convents. Mortification is of the flesh maimed pastime in the boneyard. If you listen to the cacophony of sermons, you'll find information of how flesh is wicked and must be purged of sin. How lucky we are to be given such a holy duty. How fortunate to be given such an opportunity to redeem ourselves before God. The people of the boneyard have had a long time and plenty of fucking practice too when it comes to mastering torture and degradation. I'm not a good person. I've killed I've raped and cannibalized, but I can honestly tell you, I've never been able to dream up some of the shit that goes on in that boneyard. I wandered there in by accident once, and I've never been able to get out any of the things I saw. I watched a woman naked and bound, forced to get onto her knees, and violated with iron rods. A preacher sewed his own eyes and lips shut in the front of the crowd before sawing off his own man with a piece of slate. A boy, maybe 14, was publicly crucified. The girl was drowned in shit. An old man sharpened a piece of flint and pushed on their fingernails. I could list off 100 other atrocities done in the name of redemption. Stay away from the boneyard. People there decided that hell isn't hellish enough for their liking. Forget about redemption, forget about God. The only way out of hell is riding that pillar of fire, taking over a living body. Focus on that if you want to escape. The damned can't offer you salvation. The damned only offer pain. Part 3. I'll have to leave you soon. If I'm to make the most of my life on Earth, I'm afraid I'm going to skip town. I've had plenty. I'll have to leave you soon. If I'm to make the most of my life on Earth, I'm afraid that I'll have to skip town. I've had plenty to keep myself entertained, and this body isn't suitable for running with the police. It's only a matter of time until some nosy neighbor thinks it's time to pick up the phone. With humidity over the last few days, Mommy and Daddy are already getting pretty ripe. There's something you have to understand. Hell is a big place. I've given you fair warning about a few locations, and I myself have run into and that we'll have to do. Even if I wrote a library's worth of novels solely dedicated to mapping out the distinct locations within this, I still can't tell you everything about the whole damn city. What I can do is give you a little more information about some of the damned. The Slaughtermen. Take a moment and think about all the celebrities you know. How many of them do you reckon will do well in this? Not many, I wager. Perhaps none? Fame and fortune doesn't count for shit when you're dead. Very few people are strong enough, and I mean enough and downright psychotic enough to earn a reputation in hell. Those who have what it takes are people you never want to meet. The Slaughterman is one of hell's legends. A huge, bearded man with vile teeth, bloodshot eyes, and foam from his lips. Rumor has it that his first day he emerged from the burning sack, he was unlucky enough to land at the feet of a slaver tribe. While those tribesmen chuckled to themselves and raided their clubs and whips, only happy to take the meat from this captive. Outnumbered a dozen to one, naked, unarmed, and brand new to hell, most people wouldn't stand a chance. If you believe the stories, the Slaughterman shrugged off the clubs, battering him, swatted the whips away, cutting into his flesh. They were like insect bites. He picked up the first slaver, put his hand into the man's mouth, and ripped his jaw right out of his skull. He moved on to another, and then to another, ripping them apart with his bare hands until the survivors just fucking fled. Nobody knows for sure who he was in life. Her theories now most popular being that he was a berserker of Stamford Bridge. Supposedly, a single Viking held up the English army single-handed. No matter what he could do, he could never win if he was outnumbered. He must have had better weapons, armor. He stood on the bridge and he fought. By the time he was brought down, he had killed no less than 40. I don't know if this is true at all, but I've never seen a slaughterman for myself, and I don't fucking want to, that's for sure. I can tell you for sure is that people don't become legendary in hell without a good reason. I guess the only one who knows the truth is a slaughterman. He ain't saying anything. Since the day he arrived in hell, he's only spoken once. The fleeing slavers heard it was a slaughterman tore their trail apart, naked, bloody, and surrounded by corpses. The slaughterman looked up the storm, wrecked the sky, and bellowed a single word: Valhalla. The Hellhounds. How about a little story? I wasn't new to hell. I made myself some clothes in a wooden club I found in a shelter, and had a big slab of meat roasting over a campfire. The only thing I didn't have was a tribe. The area I had been birthed in seemed slummy even for this. Collapsed hovels and mud huts, and iron was scarce, barely enough to make myself a water bowl. All in all, it was not a good spot for a tribe. Though it was simple enough, and I'd have a decent meal to carve myself a shiv or two just in case I lost my club. Then somewhere more or less dry to sleep in. After that, I took off for a tribe. Even though mildest tribe indentations resulted in a few scars and broken nose, so I wanted to be as well rested as I could be. Sleep in hell is both vital and dangerous after all. There's a knack of finding somewhere that's simultaneously sheltered, hidden, with access to an escape route. Even then, you'll never get more than a few hours at a time. And hell, the slightest suspicious of noise, that shit scared the living shit out of you. A low, throaty growl counts as a suspicious noise. Honestly, I left out of my impromptu mirrors of skins and wood. I raised my club and returned to growl one of my own. A woman crept into my building. She was staring at me with dilute pupils. She looked to be in a bad way, skinny, naked, and covered in weeping sores. Her lips peeled back to reveal broken and jagged teeth. It all took me for a second to size her up. She had been living rough for days, weeks. Judging from her protruding ribs and bloated stomach, she was well on her way to dying of starvation. So she was weak, hungry, and she didn't have a weapon. I've already eaten and relaxing a little with my club, and I've practiced a few of my swings. No sense in letting you go to waste, though. I took a step towards her, and she bolted. Just turned right around and scampered away in a strange animal grit. I took off after her, and certain that I could definitely outpace her, but if there wasn't much meat on her bones, it can still be useful. I chased her through the streets, struggling to keeping my footing on muddy ground. When I finally got close enough to swing my club, she dropped dead. The suddenness of it caught me off guard, and I tripped over, losing my club as I fell. She howled in triumph, a sound that echoed by dozens of other throats. That day, I learned two things about the hellhounds. The people who lose their minds become little more than feral beasts after enduring centuries in hell. Firstly, they have necessary animal cunnings to hunt as a pack. Secondly, human teeth and fingernails are perfectly capable of ripping flesh from bone. The surgeons. Modern doctors rarely thrive in hell. Academia and reliance on technology doesn't leave you in the best state of enduring the endless violence and brutality. There are exceptions. The people who learned to sew their friends back together amid machine gun fire on the some shaman, witch doctors, and holy men who endured famine and warfare, survivalists who know the cauterize their own wounds in the middle of a forest. There are some people who might be strong enough to apply their trade to the damned. After all, working knowledge of basic medicine is just one of those things that has a lot of meatheads roaming around the areas of this. Most of the health surgeons find a tribe as soon as they're able. Their tools might be crude, but they soon learn to make do. Flint, steel, and shards of glass serve as their scalpels. They make threads from human hair, needles, and slivers of iron. Whenever a member of the tribe has been infected, a sore, the surgeon will drain the pus, and a tribal surgeon will do what they can to save your life. But they do it all with anesthetic. There are freelance surgeons, though, the people who want to try to go at it alone. They make themselves a uniform, and the theory that being damned will recognize them if they all do look alike. It doesn't really work, but you can't expect much knowledge from people who have lost count of how many times they've died, after all. Fashions change over time. I'm told that freelancers wore headdress, bones, necklaces at some point. The current trend is to mimic Venetian plague doctors by donning a mask, wearing a long coat, and fine blackened skin. Freelancers are rare, very rare. In fact, you'll see thousands of damned for every freelance surgeon you come across. When you do, be fucking careful. Firstly, surgeons don't get a free pass in hell. The damned are more likely to attack a freelancer than they are to barter for their tools, clothing, or slaves in exchange for his services. You can't be certain that a man in a bird mask and coat is really a surgeon, or somebody who murdered a surgeon and took his clothes. Perhaps they made the outfit for themselves in order to draw the weak and wounded close. Advertising does not always invite the weak to this. If a freelancer turns out to be genuine, that doesn't give you an excuse to drop your guard. Freelance surgeons, they usually aren't stable people. Put away freelancers, they're usually sadistic fucking psychopaths, honestly. Sure, they might stitch you back together and send you on your way. They might also decide that it'd be more interesting if they stitch you to somebody else. They might think of paying an arm and leg for your service should be taken quite literally. It might turn out to be some wannabe serial killer who's yet to find their way to Skin Street. For each freelancer trying to do a tough job in a tougher place, there are a dozen or so Miguels who want to try out their toys on somebody too injured to fight back. Stick with your tribe surgeon if you're lucky enough to find one. Failing that, learn to pick up your own wounds. Trust me, if you're able to read, you've already got the intellectual advantage over a lot of Hell's residents. Universal education is pretty recent. Freelancers aren't worth the risk. Cambions. I'll be honest with you here. If you don't know the Cambion actually exists, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if the Cambions actually exist. What I'm going to tell you is something that somebody else told me. It's up to you if you decide if it's true or not. Personally, I really fucking hope it isn't. People rape one another. Hell, it happens a lot. If you're not strong enough, it'll happen to you a lot. Good news is, for the ladies out there, is that damned men fire blinks if you're almost never impregnated. And I say almost because if stories, if they're true, there's an incredibly slim chance that one of those little swimmers will be looking for an egg. Just to put into perspective, we're talking conjoined twin levels of unlikeliness here. That's just a conception. The chance of pregnant women surviving hell the full 9 months are probably conjoined triplets if unlikely. You're talking about a perfect storm of beating the odds here, but this is eternity. A monkey mashing rocks together on a typewriter will eventually produce a complete work of Shakespeare if it goes on for eternity. Who knows? The results is a perfect storm of those monkeys with their typewriters. Well, that's a Cambion, a child conceived and born in hell. Look, I'm not saying they exist, okay? I'm saying that I've met somebody who swears it's true and that he's seen a Cambion for himself. You see the babies in their birthing sacks from time to time. Usually it's just a body. Occasionally you see one drowning. Most of the damned ignore them. They wouldn't survive a day on the streets if you can afford to devote your full attention to them. Better leave them be. It's the only really fucked up people who cut off through the sacks. Yeah, I'm not gonna finish that. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. So this Cambion, or who may or may not exist, apparently looked like a normal child. It cried, it shit, it sucked a mother's tit just like any regular baby would. But the mother was a part of a tribe, and they had been able to protect her throughout her pregnancy. Couldn't tell you why. Curiosity, perhaps? I'm not sure. Well, when it was born, the whole tribe gathered around it to have a look. And among them, the man who told me the story. Somebody I met years later and eventually would kill. This man cut the baby's cord and lifted it to his face. Every man in the tribe had raped the mother at some point or another, and he wanted to see if the child looked anything like him. The Cambion looked like a normal child in every way, except one. Its eyes were dead, lifeless like a doll's. Sure, the child was alive. It wiggled, cried like a normal baby, but those eyes were wide open. Not scrunched close together like a newborn should be, but wide open, empty doll's eyes. If the story's true, I don't blame the tribe for killing the child. Something like that shouldn't exist. Right, I'm done here. I have to go. This is the point where people like to have things nicely tied up. A few dragons slain, a few maidens saved, and at the very least, you could expect some type of moral lesson to think over. Well, I think that in this case, this sort of thing is missing the point. There are no dragons to slay, no morals to learn. We do not live happily ever after. There's no grand revelation, no clever twist, no purpose, no redemption, no hope. There is only eternity to live among our own kind, after all. Part 4. Last body, I was in the living world and it didn't cope too well with my mind driving it. Sometimes it's hard to remember the lessons you learn in hell. They aren't so good for the civilized world. Murder just isn't a normal part of existence. You tend to keep it out of a bad habit, I guess you could say. The inevitable result is either death or exorcism back to the city of Dis. Safe to say I got a little carried away the last time I was here. After my last taste of freedom, I knew that I had to get back out of this. My existence ever since I squandered my last house was utterly dedicated to fighting my way back to the Pillar of Fire. After what I've seen, I had to escape. That new body seemed a little more adorable than the last one, but now that I'm back, shall we take another trip into hell? The Plecorian swamp. It rains in hell. It rains all the fucking time, and the water has nowhere else to go, so most of it drains out into the Gehenna, where it sinks into the otherworldly ash. Now apparently it disappears. The rest of it flows either into sewers beneath the city or it collects into the Plecorian swamp. You remember how bad it is to drink the rainwater in hell without boiling it? Well, Plecorian's water will kill you no matter what you do with it, even letting that stuff touch your skin. It can be pretty deadly. You see, the swamp isn't just filled with disease and rot, it's also brimming with chemical waste. One pool might simply just be undrinkable, but there's another that might just completely dissolve your skin right off your bone. If you're mad enough to travel to Plethorian or be unlucky enough to be born there, your odds of survival are slim, and that's saying something since you're in hell after all. Plethorian's waters are inky, black, and impossible. Inky, black, and impossible to tell how deep the pool is just by looking at it. It could be an inch, it could be a mile. You'll never know. Just not your next football until you plunge into the cloying abyss. Or still, there are some places where the sewers gradually drain the water and create unseen vortexes capable of dragging down even the strongest of the damned. To navigate the swamp, you better be off using crumbling buildings as stepping stones. Corrosive water causes wooden supports to wither and collapse, so plenty of debris is lying around to stand on. But even so, don't take it slow. And keep your balance. It's pretty easy to slip and find yourself in a fucking agonizing death. But at least there are wildfires. The reason why that most of the insane tribes don't try to establish a permanent stronghold in the Plethorian swamp. All the chemical waste and decaying matter makes up the swamp extremely volatile. A lightning strike builds up of grasses can result in an immense explosion that ignite Plethorian's surface a mile around. Wildfires, they move fast, and I guarantee you won't outrun one. The cockatrice. The first time you see a cockatrice, you might be forgiven of thinking that you reached the very edge of this. The pit of miles wide and several times deep. At some point, dim, distant, fragile alliance of tribes put their slaves into a digging quarry. Why they did this is lost in time, but many believe it was an attempt to escape this. Perhaps the tribes hoped that they dug deep enough that they'd tunnel the way out of hell. In my view, the most likely answer is that tribes are looking for resources. If it's true, then the excavation was a success. Miles below the surface, beneath the rock and dirt, there are caverns filled with veins of iron, copper, and other metals. So far underground, the caverns are just filled with miles below the surface. Beneath the rock and dirt, there are caverns filled with veins of iron and copper. So far underground and sheltered from the relentless fucking rain, it's easy to create a fire hot enough to smelt ore. The value of such a position wasn't lost on the tribes, and the Alliance soon showed how brittle it actually was. For short, salvage burst of treachery. The intentional settlers of cockatrice all wiped themselves out. Since then, the pit has been settled, mined countless times, coordinated by the efforts from countless tribes who tried to transform the quarry into an abyss. So far, these alliances have always broken sooner or later. The cockatrice has many paths into its depths, and the lower you go, the more the labyrinths of the pits become. The sprawling caverns shelter entire shanty towns and crude smelting facilities. Some are abandoned, some have lost cave-ins. There are yet to still be plenty of tribes who fight and join the forces and betray one another to get the precious ore veins. By this point, you have to go pretty fucking deep to find an untapped vein. This is where cockatrice becomes truly deadly. Anybody who thought they might be able to turn a tunnel out of hell would surely be disappointed once they had learned what lies in the actual beneath. In all these years after digging so many miles, not one person has gotten some magical portal leading out of this. They also haven't run into a magma for that matter. Instead, you go deeper, the colder cockatrice becomes. I've never been able to see the bottom myself. I'm told that if you go down there, there's cold enough to freeze your blood and shatter your skin. And maybe that's true, but I could certainly believe it. On rare occasions, I've been to cockatrice, and I've always had to turn back once the walls become more ice than rock, and a narrow hallways become more of a death trap. If you have the numbers to do it, cockatrice is still a valuable place to settle. Just remember that when hunger, cold, and greed are consistent companions. None of the damned can be trusted. The Pale Witch. I've told you about the Slaughterman previously. Hell has another legendary figures, each with their own subsequent. The Ripper, the Grim Doctor, the Tyrant, and many, many more. So far, I've only encountered one of these figures during my last stay in Hell. I came across the Pale Witch. As with the case with any legends, the truth about the Pale Witch tends to get lost among the superstitions. I've heard plenty of theories as to who she is. The Pale Witch is a Shatriga who has the power of an evil eye. The witch is a Gorgon whose gaze turns her victim's soul. The witch is a succubus who traps her in the midst of those she wishes to consume. All of this is bullshit. I've seen the Pale Witch and I know the truth about her. When I first saw her, I didn't realize who I was looking at. She was naked, locked in combat with an armored resident who I just took for fresh meat. But here's a tip for you. If you see a resident fighting fresh meat, kill both of them while they're distracted. I plan to do this exactly, but something about this fight, it seemed off. Residents usually have an upper hand against fighting fresh meat, but this particular bout definitely seemed one-sided as it gets. She was naked, whereas he was clad in leather and bone. She was unarmed, where he had a club. She was wafus, well, he was huge. Despite him having the advantage, the resident was clearly terrified. The rules of Hell dictated he should have crushed her skull and taken her skin and eaten her flesh, but it wasn't happening. He was uncoordinated, apparently too desperate to escape. Every swing he took, it was clumsy, and the blows didn't match the land on her. She didn't seem to have any effect if they did. I could only stare as this naked, vulnerable woman took the resident's club from his unresisting hand and swung it at his knee. Now, I'm accustomed to the sound of bones breaking, but by this time, the noise had caught me off guard. How the fuck was this happening, is what I thought. She brought the club on his other knee, and then his elbows, then his ankles, then his shoulders. She left him broken and screaming on the floor. She could have finished him off with a blow to the head, but stolen his clothing, taking a rightful place as resident. That's how Hell works. Those are the rules I learned. Thoroughly bloody trial and error. It didn't happen. Rather than kill him, she sat down beside him in the mud and took his hand in hers. I actually thought she was going to console him until she started to break his fucking fingers one by one. She snapped the fingers on both hands with calmness that made no sense to me whatsoever. Torture is common in Hell, but there's always a purpose behind it. The people on Skin Street do it out of sadism. The Boneyard do it out of this insane purification rituals. This woman did it without emotion and without reason. I honestly didn't know if she even understood that she was hurting him. I don't think her mind works the same way as ours does. Eventually, the resident finally lost consciousness. Man can only take so much pain after all that. Shock gets to him naturally. Surely she's satisfied. Surely she had taken his clothes and restored Hell's order. No, she just stood up tilted her head slightly, uttered a noise for the first time, and it wasn't a victory cry nor a sign of relief. Instead, she made a sound nothing more than a faintly amused It was as if she didn't comprehend why her plaything stopped moving. She suddenly stood up, stepped away from him, apparently content letting him live, unconscious, crippled on the ground. She kept his club but didn't take his clothing. The cold and the rain didn't seem to bother her. Then she looked at me. In an instant, I knew I was looking at the pale witch. I looked into her eyes, and I couldn't move. I understood that she was straight away, and a sheer terror of it froze me. The pale witch isn't a striga. She isn't a gorgon. She isn't a succubus. The pale witch is a cambion. It's hard to put into words how paralyzing sight of a cambion is. That's a perfectly serene face of the dead. Staring eyes just don't belong on a body that's otherwise human. It was like looking into a face of a mannequin. And you know it's looking back at you. That noise again. That kind of detached curiosity that doesn't exist in a world of predators and prey. Might makes right. Survival of the fittest. Nobody in the city of this has any right to make that noise. She took an awkward step towards me, and I saw her. That right leg was broken. It seemed that the fight had injured her after all. She just didn't notice it. She tried to walk normally, but was completely unaware that her leg had an extra joint. I didn't care how tough you are. Nobody should be able to put their full weight into a broken leg without wincing. She stepped closer. Her zombie shuffled steadily, closing the gap between us. As I stared at her, she raised the club. My survival instincts finally kicked into gear. Her transfixing spell broke just enough for me to stumble back and avoid her swing. And I ran. I ran from the woman with a broken leg, and I'm not ashamed of it. Looking back at my experience, there are some things that you just can't comprehend. The pale witch is a cambion. I'm certain of it. She was born in hell, and hell is all she's ever going to know. She's also looked to be about 30 years old, and that shouldn't be possible. No baby survives in hell. And if they had to try to protect, even if they had to try protecting them, there just isn't enough nourishment for an infant to grow into a toddler, let alone a damn adult. The pale witch is a walking impossibility. Her existence is a defiance to all reason. I would endure every torture of the people's skin street in the boneyard. Could conceive of it if I meant I would never have to look in her eyes again. Hopefully, these tips are going to help you survive. I'll be seeing you soon. At least I hope.